Hello everyone and welcome. In this video we're going to take a look at chapter 8. In my mind this is one of the ones that's most jam-packed with interesting things, so hopefully you're excited for this and hopefully some new ideas will come from chapter 8. To get started, it is called Beauty's Bespoken Treasure. It's know the past, see the future. Quote is, our thoughts and imagination are the only real limits to our possibilities. Orison Swett Marden. The summary of this, he starts off just by talking about our Unbreakable Threads, another book that he wrote. Then a lot of traditions, kind of speaking to that past, if you will. Thanksgiving, Christmas, Halloween, same for Ramadan, Yom Kippur, and a lot of other ones too. He then kind of switches into this more, there's traditions, but it's a missed opportunity when we are missing and not respecting these traditions. Such was the American Indian Removal Act of 1830. He then talks about one of the oldest Native American tribes, the Hopi. And that is a subject matter that just is in so much of this chapter. He then moves on to Charles Loloma. And in this, I wanted to make note of this Waddell Gallery link. And it'll definitely be in the description because it seems like a ton of this different information actually came from that website, but we'll go into that a little bit later. He talks about Charles Loloma and how he was the Badger clan. He was very much renowned artist. In that talks about how Sanwe, I believe, sorry if that's not the correct pronunciation, who was his niece, eventually kind of learned his trade in this art, and we'll go into it a little bit more. But basically the chapter is all about Hopi culture and then Charles. As I mentioned, a lot of this information seems to be coming from this. Now, it's not an exact direct quote from quote, but there's quite a few just in this few paragraphs that I did. And then on page 80, all of this is there. Note that I omitted a couple of paragraphs that didn't connect to these ones. However, there's some information that connects to other ones. It was going to be too long to reference the entire gallery. There were even more, and definitely check it out. There's just quite a bit that just seemed like, this is information I've read before or heard before. Now, the PBS television film I was interested in, and I was not able to look it up and find it anywhere. I think it's pretty old. I know this says 1074. I'm pretty sure this is supposed to be 1974, so it's probably just not archived online and it's, I don't know, somewhere else or totally forgotten. But if you do find that, let me know. I am interested. There were some quotes in this, and it's an interesting thing. I feel like from chapter 4, that dancer quote that connected to the image, the quotes to me that are within it are kind of interesting. His house sits right on the edge of Hopi. So when you look out and you see the vastness, Charles was that way. He was just so vast. So that's Debbie Dreyer. Charles taught that the beauty is all around us in Hopi, in the environment and in the culture and ceremony. By combining elements from what is the part of my everyday life with the finest ideas and finest of materials, I can interpret part of the Hopi for people to see and wear. And that's his niece. She also said, we used to fly planes around Hopi in places like Canyon de Chelly to look at rock formations, the stones on the mesas, or how our inlay designs came to be. It's a bird's eye view. So nothing as clear to me as like the lines, forms, and color. Looking at the know the past, see the future, kind of has this past component and then this view, this seeing. Not to say I've made a drastic connection in those, but at least trying to pinpoint some of these connections within this quotes. In the Spidey Senses, there are a couple of ones outside of, I think, the image, which is the Hopi Calendar. These were the actual text parts that kind of came out to me outside of kind of the entire one, and you'll just see there's lots of stuff in this one. How he's talking about he's a visionary, he bucked norms, which kind of reminded me of that bison later on. But then also how he was talking about, since we're looking for a treasure box, that he didn't just create outside the box, he redesigned the box completely, which was interesting. He was so out of the ordinary in his tradition, in quotes, of jewelry making. They're known for ceramics, fine textiles, and intricate basket weaving. And so just kind of taking this, what was their culture or tradition, if you will, and just completely stepping out of it. It just seemed kind of one of this, like, know the past, see the future, or almost create this different future. Whatever that means to you, those are just a couple of the ones that I wanted to at least take note of. Now, to move on to the next portion of this, I could spend a lot of time talking about the very start, which was our Unbreakable Threads. He does say there's a clue or two within it. And so without basically redoing those, I wanted to at least shout out 2 videos. One which was from the TTI Unofficial podcast. I'll have the link there, where they talked to the artist, and there were 2 pieces of art that were actually changed. And so from that one, it seems like likely all the images were her design, not John Collins Black, except for the 2, this butterfly that was at the start, and then the hairline of this. So watch that whole one, because I think that has the strongest evidence for an image in there. Now, the actual story panels, or the stories within it, I think has some merit to John could have hid a clue in the text. And things that come to mind to me would be like the image where he's looking out into the stars on the roof, which was very similar to a part in a future chapter, if you will. And so there's some other things there. Early on, I thought that the 7 and the 6 or a 9 was pretty prevalent, but yet pretty hidden in there. Same for this. There were these, like, all of them were these yellow numbers, except for 2 of them. And just decided, like, well, could you make some coordinates? And the only one within this was this 48 north and then 97 west. There's also maybe a gravestone that had some stuff there. But again, I don't think these would be hidden in that way without the artist, like, saying, like, hey, yeah, he changed, like, a couple of numbers here. Maybe she didn't point those out for the podcast, or most likely these were just some designs in there. But to me, the 7 and the 9 looked very, like, discrete, but obviously numbers to me. But from this one, I would kind of debate that it's probably not. But you can check that out. It's on my other channel, Matt Tech Tidbits, if you wanted to. There's a few treasure ones, and then lots of Google Sheets and other tech if you're interested. In any case, wanted to highlight those 2 videos on that and leave it there. There isn't a very strong solve out there, and even with those, it's what do you do with it? It's all speculation still, but wanted to at least highlight those because I think that's a big component of this chapter. Now, for the images, this one has a lot of images. There's some rings, bracelets, and lots of colors, vivid colors that were talked about in the subtext. Then the Hopi Calendar, which is something we will look at even further in this video. A couple things that I would note is just the backgrounds, kind of this blackish felt, and then one blue. The designs themselves, it doesn't really seem like there was anything, like, added to it per se. I haven't really found anything that stuck out to me as a clue versus just showing some of this art. The Hopi Calendar, however, I know has often been a very big talk point of how there has to be a clue within that. One thing I also wanted to bring up in this is that there were some Adobe pages in the background. The Hopi Calendar is on one that's pretty worn, if that's what the style you would call, kind of leathery. And there were some instances where the actual files were found from, I believe it was one of the Adobe pages or like Adobe readers of it. I'll leave a link to the Reddit post of who said we found that this Adobe stock image was on some of the pages. And you can see here how it lines up essentially perfectly. Now, does that mean all of the pages are lined up like this? Not exactly, but we know that he at least did it. So there's a stronger point that he used just stock images to kind of add a text to it. Initially, I was thinking maybe if it has a white page background, there's no clues. There is faded. There's more heavy in clues. And that still could be true. I just don't think there's going to be like little things hidden, at least with this one. Maybe the other ones he did edit it or, change it in certain ways. Now, looking at this one, I did go through a lot of them to try to match, are some of these pages used and repeated. And what I found is page 6 and 7, 28, 29, 85, 120, 135, and 197 all use a similar template like this. The biggest things are just some of these elements, especially this like worn dot there, that you could see within both of them. Now, if you look between the difference, obviously there's more coloration to this Hopi Calendar one versus the table of contents. But I feel like there's enough little portions of it that you can definitely see how these match. Now, could he have added more detail to it as a clue? Of course. But to me, he's just using these Adobe stock images to create kind of a cool, worn like background just for the design point of view. Again, I could be off. And you can see here that they're not exactly like one for one, like cut in half. There's definitely some changes that he added. There is a bit of a, you can kind of see how it zooms in and is kind of squished, if you will, from like this goes down a little bit. But that is something that you can do pretty easily within like an Adobe Photoshop or one of those components, just to change the look, add a little bit of color to it, and more wear, if you will. That's one thing to keep in mind. Now we're going to move on into the Hopi Calendar. And in the Southwest traditions, the Hopi Calendar can actually be found within it, and you can see quite a bit of what the text is showing actually is found in there. I will also mention right here that in the first edition, and it is on the website too, that he accidentally put this August description with the flute ceremony here. So this column was over here in the first edition. The ebooks, and I think even the second edition on, do not have this error. A lot of the design you can see plays into basically, well, it's in both. He added his kind of color scheme, he added the background like I was mentioning, and also some underlines. I wanted to go through and put like 6 different ideas on this that I've had, and I'm sure others have also had and discussed. I don't really have a solid one that I think is the answer to it, but wanted to at least bring these up. There's 6 different ones: the hints for clues, words, math, cipher, sundial/shadows, and then the birthstones. So starting off, maybe this is something that's hinting at how many clues there are in a chapter. I don't think this has as much merit as I kind of look through them, but to me there are some interesting. So it has January, February, so that'd be chapters 1, 2, chapter 4, 5, and 8. It kind of made sense to me because chapter 6 didn't really have much, if not anything. Chapter 7 is similar. Chapter 3, I feel like, did have some different components that, to me, would have been with clues, but it kind of lined up with some of those. There were later ones, too, that this wouldn't go to, so maybe it's kind of just for the first 8 chapters, kind of looking back and saying it's there, but honestly, that's probably not likely the answer, but it was just interesting that 2 of the ones that I would say likely would not have any clues, chapters 6 and then chapter 7 as well, were on this list. So I was like, maybe. Next were words. Now with these ones had some underlines and then some lines over some letters. And so if you take those and use them with the month that they are with, it's 1, 2, 4, 4, 5, 8. There are 3 words that I could see kind of being answered there, which is antler, learnt, even though learned most likely would be it, and rental. Now, to me, it's kind of interesting. Like, none of them really provide a great one. I feel like rental is the one that I'm most interested in, especially with the next chapter. Rental 90 kind of makes me curious, but might not be the case either. Learned, I feel like, could have easily done learned with other letters if he wanted to. So like, why those letters and why in those locations? So there's, speculation with it. And then antler could be something there too. I wanted to put the number equivalents too, just on the off chance. And that's again based off of what month that letter is in, because I feel like there's has to be a connection between the two. Otherwise, he could have used the R from March instead of having it in April. Like, there has to be a reason to have two there. Next one is like math or something there. There is a section called More About the Hopi. And if you look at it, it's M-A-T-H, which to me is math. Now, there's a lot of numbers in there. So maybe you have to do something with math there. Maybe you have to do something with the angles. Although this angle that he made would have been on this calendar, so I think that's less likely. Maybe it's something else with circles or where these lines are coming up with. But the combination of More About the Hopi, that being math, plus this calendar, I think there might be something there. We'll see. This is one that I've spent too much time probably looking into it, and is using it as like a cipher in a way. The rule that I would put on there, essentially, you would count based off of where something circular goes on this in January, February, April, May, August, and then counting out. Let me show you on the next slide. What I mean is that there are these circles in the chapters. So maybe based off of these phrases, which do change on each chapter, maybe you're supposed to take those phrases, and if it is within a certain chapter, that you're supposed to take letters from it. So then it would be January, February, March, April. In this one, I chose April here. Now there is some here, so it's like debate, like how much phrase too much. To me, this would be enough for April, October, and September. But again, it could be May. But if that's there, then you would take whatever that is. So the fourth word, 1, 2, 3, 4 for April, and you take the third and fifth letters from that. Now, to take it another step further, it's like, well, are you supposed to take it from the chapter title? Are you supposed to take it from the written off subtitles? A little bit of both? Or my personal favorite, if this is something, if you see these lines, if it's below, you're supposed to take it from the chapter subtitle. If it's above, you're supposed to take it from the actual chapter title. So that's kind of what I've tried, but I've done a combination of all of them. So the next slide will show what I put in. And again, maybe I'm doing it wrong too with these different components. Like maybe not, there's some more where like that. But this is what I've gotten from all of them. So you can take a look at it. You can pause it too if you want. This is, where I put it in ones that could potentially fit. But again, it's a lot. Now, just to read through what I had here, is it essentially is showing kind of the main phrase, and then anything that is red is changing. Initially, I made these chapter ones based off of what's the change. So like this one has this phrase here, and this one kept that phrase, but then added some different ones. And I think I honestly kind of missed some too. Like for example, here, there's a couple, but just trying to show kind of my code on it. I'd encourage, if you're interested in doing this, maybe try it yourself and see if you got the same things. Now, all that to say, I don't want to go through every single one because agree or disagree with them. Ultimately, I found them in these chapters 1, 2, 3, 4, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 13, 14, 15, and then kind of stopped from there, which is interesting in like maybe there's sections of chapters and clues compared to the last end. There were a few different ways I did it. The first here were the letters that I got from only using the chapter titles. If it was one like August, where it says you're supposed to get the 8th word and then the 6th letter of the 8th word. In an example, if like the title had 3 words and you were supposed to go to word 8, you would go to word 1, 2, 3, and then for 4 would go back to 1, 2, 3, and then 7 would be word 1, and 8 would end on word 2. So there were some chapters like that, which I think makes this less likely. So those are the ones only with the title, and I didn't really make anything super great. This one, I did both the chapter titles and the subtitles. So for that one with word 8, I would start on the chapter titles first and then the subtitles. So it'd be chapter title 1, 2, 3, and then go to the subtitles 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, or start over again if needed. Then this one was using the up lines would go to the titles, and then the down lines would be the subtitles. Things that I found from those with words which don't really make sense is I'm, her, hip, lunar, summer line. And there's a lot of other combinations of words you can do. There are 23 letters, I believe, that I got from these, and those are some of the words I got. Her, human, philosopher, ruin. And honestly, there are some words that I'm like, ooh, this is interesting, like lunar and summer, but they don't really make sense with it. And honestly, like if someone gives you 20-ish letters, I bet that there's a lot of different things that you could find. It was interesting. I still like the idea, but it to me doesn't make sense in this way. And maybe I'm doing something wrong with it, but some sort of cipher like this with a circular thing plus the chapter titles with the frame being different, to me was rather interesting. Now this next one is a little bit more abstract of where did I get to this shadow direction? Well, there's this thing that looks kind of like a sundial, and you can go into the calendar stones or the sunstones. And then there are some other ones that actually have these shadows that are clearly pointing in a certain direction. And I thought maybe that's something that this has to do with, well, the puzzle. Maybe you have to put these up in some way. Maybe that shows the order that you should use them, or something totally off. But wanted to at least put this as another potential idea. Go ahead and go through it if you found it interesting. Another one, could it be like a birthstone to the calendar? There's other talk about colors. There's other talks about birthstones specifically too. Maybe this is a way. And this would be another time where generally 12 is seen as going up and down like on a clock, and then 1, 2, 3, 4 up to 11. And this kind of turns that as an angle where 1 January is more on the left side, which could again be another component to this calendar. That was a lot on the Hopi Calendar, and this chapter honestly has a ton about calendars. That's even so much so that I personally didn't see a Jonnerism within this. U.S. locations mentioned. There were quite a few. California, New York, New Jersey, New Mexico, California, Arizona. And so added those to our U.S. locations. Feel free to go to the spreadsheet to see the different components if you want. Now, Chapter 8 talks about how he authored the Unbreakable Threads. So we put that right there at the front because in 2024, that's pretty close to when he authored this book. Now, there's a lot of history in this one. For example, descriptions like Christmas or Thanksgiving, Halloween. Would that mean you should start a timeline with it? As I've continued through this, it seems less and less likely just because there are so many dates, but wanted to at least put some of these out there. And, you know, a lot of them are on Charles and his story, but there were some other things that were in there, and for documentation's sake, we'll continue to do that, but I'm not going to go through all of these because this is a lot of text, but go ahead and go through the spreadsheet if you want to kind of take some of my notes. Colors mentioned, there were a lot of the same colors within it. And so in this, I tried to make the colors that were put components in those, but like turquoise, turquoise, turquoise. There's a lot of the same colors over and over again. I meant to highlight all of them. I just haven't put the conditional formatting yet. So these ones that are there, pay no mind. I'll try to update those on the spreadsheet itself just to kind of better show like here's some turquoise colors and then have them there. But again, the same colors kind of seem to be in all of them. That was it. I mean, it's kind of a lot. And in the end, I'm not really giving any solid answers, but hopefully you found this helpful nonetheless. A lot of this information is based off of the Charles Loloma and his history, how there are different sources that seem to be cited or used for the making of this book, the background pages and how those kind of connections within the book seem to just be Adobe stock images or kind of reused versus little details in it, but I wouldn't put it past it. Finally, a bunch of Hopi Calendar ideas. There's a lot that seems to be hidden in there, or a lot of ideas that could be spurred from it. Time will tell with which ones were actually correct. So as always, do those social things like share, subscribe. I do appreciate it. Leave a comment. I feel like this is one of the most discussed chapters, and for good reason. There's a lot of information in it. So if I just rushed over something, leave a comment and I'll do my best to hopefully spur some conversations on there. Till the next one, Bye now.